Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chapter 9, Text 17. Pitaham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha vidyam pavitram onkara riksama yajur evacha. Here Krishna, among other things, identifies himself as the Father. The concept of accepting God as the Father is, of course, prominent in the Christian mode of religion. Here Krishna also claims himself as the Mother. In India there is a sect of worshippers who accept the Mother as the Supreme. They worship Durga, or the material energy, as Supreme. She is often referred to as Mataji. You will see pictures of Durga Devi with 10 hands riding on a tiger, and they'll put the sign Jai Mataji or Jai Mata Di. They conceive of Mother as Supreme. But Krishna is the Father and Mother of everybody. What do we think of when we think of a father? One of the things we might think of is someone who's somewhat fearful. Someone who's not fearful, but fearsome. Inspires, it makes us feel fearful. Not Krishna, a father. Does everyone feel, when you're children, you felt like that about your father, a little afraid? Is it? No? He doesn't punish you when you do something wrong. That's why all the kids are so wild. But in the Christian tradition, this is very strongly emphasized, that you have to fear God. Otherwise God will punish you by sending you to burn in hell forever. That's why I stopped being a Christian. There's not a place to put you being burned. There's one book by a famous atheist, British so-called philosopher, Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell. You haven't heard his name. He's a prominent British atheist of the early 20th century. So he wrote a book called Why I Am Not a Christian, which was quite bold in those days to write such a book, considering that most of the British people were staunchly Christian. So one of the things he wrote is that, well, what kind of merciful God is this if He sends you to burn in hell forever? So actually it's a fact that Christianity in many ways has done a bad propaganda job for God. That's what I also thought, that if God is so unkind that He burns you in hell forever, I don't want to go to heaven, I'd rather go to hell and be with such a person. Even my own father, sometimes he punishes me, but he always gives me another chance. And I can't think of anything I could do that would be so bad that He would send me to burn forever. So this is one of the attitudes one may have towards a father. Somewhat fearful. But generally we think of a father as loving, kind, who protects us, both mother and father. Mother means, actually Prabhupada said that in this material world, the closest thing to pure love is a mother's love for her child. Because the mother especially simply gives herself to the child without any personal consideration. That's why in consideration of the different ways of serving the Lord, one of the topmost ways to serve Him is to become a parent of the Lord. Parents. Vatsalya ras. That if we conceive of ourselves as children of God, that means we expect Him to provide for us. But if we take the position of the parents of God, then the parents, they simply serve the children. They feel themselves to be protectors of the children. So Krishna, actually he is the father and mother of everybody. But sometimes he appears as the child of his devotee. Now it's very interesting, Krishna is presenting himself as the father and mother. Practically he is, because he gives, by him all living beings come into being. We can also consider how Krishna is our protector, our kindest friend. Why do people come to Krishna consciousness? We find people coming to Krishna consciousness, they have enough food, clothing, money. They have enough opportunities for sense gratification. Then why do they come to Krishna consciousness? What are they missing? In modern life they are advertising, if you have enough money and enough intoxication, you can enjoy sense gratification in various ways, then you should be happy. But people are not happy. Why are they turning to Krishna? Because they're missing that kindness and affection and love. Even that is there in material life. The parents love the children and some affection is there. But people are looking for the affection. Krishna, we are promoting Krishna as the kindest friend. That person who, if we take shelter of, He will never let us down. So this is the culture we want to create within our society. This is the society for Krishna consciousness. So Krishna is the best friend of all living beings. He is the father, the mother, the grandsire, the support. In all respects, He is our best friend. You see, we are so much rejecting Krishna. Life after life we are forgetting Krishna. But Krishna is not forgetting us. Krishna travels with us from body to body. And He's always trying to awaken us to our original position of loving service to Him. He's always ready to help us. Now can you imagine if you try to be friends with someone and they reject you? You come up to them very kindly, very nicely, and they slap you in the face. Or they simply ignore you. So you won't be very happy. And most likely you'll think, to hell with that person. I don't want to have anything to do with them. Or you might try again, wait for a day or two and again try to approach them. But then if they again reject you, then you're not likely to even want to try to help them. Now can you imagine Krishna has been accompanying us in different bodies and He's always trying to wake us up to our loving constitutional position. But we are constantly ignoring Him and rejecting Him. Sometimes we even invent philosophies. There is no God. We are all God. I am God, you are God. I am the enjoyer. Ishvaraham aham bhogi. I am the controller, I am the enjoyer. So even though we are rejecting Krishna, Krishna is not rejecting us. And after millions of lifetimes of rejecting us, if we turn to Him, He will immediately turn to us and accept us. So how can there be a better friend than Krishna? So in our preaching, we're trying to bring people to Krishna consciousness. Preaching doesn't just mean we need more devotees to clean the pots. So let us make some devotees. We need more devotees to clean the pots. So let us make more devotees. But preaching means to bring people, to awaken people to their love of Krishna, which is the nectar for which we are always anxious. Material life is dry. There's no nectar. Why is that? There's no exchange of love. There is, but that love is hollow and empty. But Krishna consciousness means to awaken our real loving propensity. How was it that Prabhupada was able to attract so many people from all over the world? Now there could be many answers to this question. But basically, people found in Prabhupada someone they could take shelter of. Someone who really cared for them. Prabhupada is the representative of Krishna, His divine grace. His divine grace means He carries the mercy of Krishna. Samsara davan aladudha loka tranaya karanya ghana ghanatvam praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guroshi Charanaravinda. Krishna is like an ocean of transcendental auspicious qualities. And the spiritual master is like a cloud that takes water from that ocean and sprinkles it on the people of the world who are burning in the fire of material lust. So Krishna has unlimited transcendental auspicious qualities. But what is the most important of Krishna's qualities? Who knows? What? Yeah, Krishna's most important quality is His mercy on His devotees. So the spiritual master is the personification of that mercy, therefore is called His divine grace. So people were attracted to Prabhupada because Prabhupada was the personification of Krishna's mercy. Prabhupada was only thinking how to save people from the suffering of material life. He gave His time, His energy, His very blood to try to pick people up, to save them from their hellish birth and rebirth. And of course Prabhupada gave philosophy, He gave chanting. But what is it that brings everything to life? You may be an expert philosopher. Sometimes we see devotees, they're very expert in studying the philosophy. We see other devotees who are very expert in singing and leading kirtan. There are so many different qualities that devotees can develop by the mercy of Krishna. But the most important quality is that quality of compassion. Even now, in our movement, when we think of the old devotees, all disciples of Prabhupada, there are two names that so many devotees remember with such great affection. Affection means love. Yeah, love is a very vague term actually. One is Vishnu Jan and the other is Jayananda. Have you heard these names? Because they made so many devotees. They made and they maintained so many devotees. See, to maintain doesn't just mean feeding them, but help to keep their Krishna consciousness alive. It's one thing to make devotees, but to keep them is something else. Because there are many tests and trials. So Vishnu Jan and Jayananda are famous because they loved the devotees so much. And they set such a good example. They cared for the devotee. It's not like this love in the material world. You say love and you smile at someone and then you stab them in the back. They're actually concerned for keeping them alive in Krishna consciousness. Actually, Prabhupada said that our Krishna consciousness, our temples, there should be like a family. He said that the temple president should be like the father. You heard this before? And the temple president's wife should be like the mother. He got a big job. He got a lot of children. It means father and mother, they care for all the children. They tell them what to do and what not to do. And sometimes the children don't behave properly. But they tolerate that and teach them to be better. Set a good example. Especially young children. You remember when you were very young? I don't know, but especially boys, they look up to their fathers like that. They think, oh, my father is so great, so wonderful. And actually, if the father is wonderful, if he's very good character, then the children will look up to him throughout their lives. But many times in the modern age, the father, he's a drunkard, or he's keeping girlfriends or something. And when the children find out, they become disgusted and disillusioned. So anyway, Prabhupada wanted this, he was saying family atmosphere within our temple. That means a culture of caring, I don't know. Together, yeah? Like a family. An ethos of caring for each other. Atmosphere of caring. Actually, culture of caring. Culture means the paradigm which governs the way we think and act. So that caring for the other devotees. Now, Prabhupada, he also said this is a pushing movement. Prabhupada said that my spiritual master is pushing me, I am pushing you, and you should push others. Push people to surrender to Krishna. And pushing because we have so much work to do. We have to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. It's not a small job. We have a lot of work to do. Prabhupada was always pushing. He said to double book distribution every year. Can you imagine? Even if you distribute one book a year, then within 10 years, within 10, 15 years, it'll be like millions of books if you always double it. So Prabhupada said once the devotees were walking on morning walk with Prabhupada in Paris, and they were in the embassy area. So there are so many embassies. There were so many embassies there. Yeah. Embassy of America. Yeah. Embassy of America. You said that? Embassy of USSR. Not USSR. Well, at that time it was USSR. No, in Paris though. Yeah. No, at that time, this when Prabhupada was there, an embassy of Britain. You get the point? The devotees are walking with Prabhupada and they saw all the different embassies. So one devotee said to Prabhupada that Prabhupada in future, just like they have an embassy in every country has an embassy in every major city in the world. So in future we should also have our temples in every major city of the world. Prabhupada said, why? Why every major city in the world? Every house in the world. That when we are walking in the morning, we want to hear coming from every home, ding, 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 ding. So Prabhupada thought big. One thing he said that all his sannyasis, they should open more centers than me. More centers. It was a big feast. It was a big feast today. All my sannyasis should open more centers than me. They should make more disciples than me. And they should write more books than me. He said, all my disciples, they should make another 10,000 disciples. So Prabhupada was pushing, do big things. So our movement is a pushing movement. But it's also supposed to be a caring movement. We're trying to do many big things. So we have to push the devotees. If we don't push the devotees, they'll all go to sleep, isn't it? Actually, I was just saying to Sanatana Dharma Prabhu today that I was just recently visiting one of our country ashrams. So everything there is very pleasant. There's lots of space and for all the devotees. And it's in the country, so they don't get many visitors. So it's all very pleasant. As I was saying, there's lots of space for the devotees. So they tend to be a little spaced out also. Everything's peaceful. Very, very peaceful. So in a center like this, there's not much space for the devotees. So actually it's rather austere. But actually these centers where it's quite austere, they're in the city, they're usually more blissful actually, because there's no opportunity to space out. There's no space to space out. Even if you want to go to sleep, someone will trip over you. So it's a little tough, a lot of austerity, but at the same time it's very blissful. So this is a pushing movement. There's a lot of pushing. The only thing is we have to be careful not to push the devotees out the door. It's a great art how to push devotees to surrender to Krishna without, to use another classic ISKCON term, frying them out. You've heard this word, fry them out? You didn't hear that. Anyway, burn them out, smoke them. So we have to, you see, there's different ways of pushing. If you push, that means to make them feel frustrated. So, it's a great art to do that devotees, they also have to feel cared for. Devotees have to feel cared for, looked after. So actually all the devotees have to help all the other devotees. You can't, you see, this is an example of pushing movement, massaging movement. Now he'll tell him, go out and distribute at least 100 big books. So pushing with affection. Pushing must be there. Without pushing, we all simply space out. You have no tilak on. Why don't you go and put tilak on? You look quite nice, but you'd look much nicer with tilak on. Push him out. Come back with tilak. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to send his students away. If they didn't have tilak, go away. Come back with tilak. So, all the devotees have to help all the other devotees. If you see a devotee looks a little morose, then you have to, if you see he's morose, going on for 1 or 2 days, something you have to see what's going on, what's the problem. Sometimes devotees just get something in their mind and they turn it over and over in their mind. And usually it's just something completely ridiculous. Once I was town president in our center in Dhaka in Bangladesh. So we had very few devotees and we used to play a lecture cassette of different sannyasis, usually for the morning lecture. So one morning I put on a cassette, and at the beginning of this lecture, the sannyasi just exploded and started chastising the pujaris for something they'd done wrong. Jai! Now you look much nicer. Alright, next time put on tilak. So anyway, you see that the pujari in our temple was always very cooperative. But after that, whatever I said, he would always argue with me. So after 2-3 days I said, Prabhu, what's the problem? You're always cooperating with me. Now whatever I say, if I say black, you say white, what's the problem? So he said, well, this is the problem, and that's the problem, that's the problem. And then you put that cassette on, chastising the pujaris. I said, Prabhu, I never listened to that cassette before. I just put it on. I didn't know it was... Oh, really? Oh, okay. And he was okay after that. He thought I'd put it on just to chastise him. So sometimes there can be some misunderstanding. And we just go on in our head. So if there's any misunderstanding, actually there will be misunderstanding. It's best not to make a very big thing about it. See, we're living together with so many devotees. And someone will always say something the wrong way, do something. If we're living in a group together, we have to tolerate so many things. And see that everyone is here to serve Krishna. So they're all glorious. And not make a very big thing out of very small things. If there's some small little misunderstanding, we shouldn't make a big issue. Or if there is something, some bad feeling, something like that, then we can talk to the devotee that, Prabhu, we somehow, there's some problem, what's the problem? Very humbly approach. It's better not to accuse the devotee. Sometimes you think, well, this devotee is completely bogus, he's doing all this. If you accuse them, then they become upset. But it's best just to ask them, because you don't know, they might have some reason which you weren't aware of for behaving in the way they do. All these, that means giving respect, what does Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? Giving respect to others, thinking ourselves the servant of the Vaishnava. Even who is a leader in Krishna consciousness, who can be a leader who thinks of themselves as the best servant, as the servant of all the devotees. Actually being a leader in many ways is difficult, because you have to tell others what to do. That's your duty. But naturally a Vaishnava, he doesn't like to tell others what to do, but he accepts that as a service. So all the other devotees, they also have to cooperate with that. But naturally, who is a leader, he will inspire devotees if he himself has that mood of service. And always remembering that devotees, they aspire, that why they've come to this movement, they're aspiring for that affection which is not there in the material world. So Krishna is the reservoir of all loving dealings. He is the kindest person. So if devotees reflect that, then they will be worthy representatives of Krishna. Now that kindness doesn't mean some sentimental, simply smiling. That also means there may be chastisement also, if required. Although our general mode is not chastisement. Rather, that saying is there in English that example is better than precept. That means it's better to set a good example rather than simply tell others, you should do this, you should do that. It's better to set a good example. And if you set a good example, then if a devotee has the respect of other devotees by his setting a good example, then in most cases, he'll just have to say a few words gently that, Prabhu, I think you should just adjust a little bit like this, your behavior. And devotees will respect that. It's not easy. We're in the material world. We're not in the spiritual world. We've all come to Krishna consciousness with so many different material contaminations. But we all have to help each other to come to the pure position. In Krishna consciousness, especially in ashram life, we're expected to maintain day after day a very high standard of surrender. Every day devotees are expected to rise early and engage in a full day's service to Krishna. Practically those who are in the ashram, they're expected to act on the level of pure devotee. Because in our ashrams there are no other activities but service to Krishna. So it can be difficult, no doubt. So we can't expect everyone to come to the perfect stage immediately. So we all have to help each other come up. Just like Krishna here is saying, He is the Father, He is the Mother, He is the support of everyone, He's the Grandfather. So we're talking about Krishna's mercy, Krishna's kindness, Krishna's love. So we should also think how to reflect that in our own lives. There's one nice incident about Srila Prabhupada, that one devotee was seeing how Prabhupada was dealing with all different kinds of people, and they all came to Prabhupada, and whoever came to Prabhupada became happy. Of course, there were some rascals who Prabhupada would shout at, and the rascals would leave in an angry mood. But there weren't many people like that. But mostly, people became very happy when they came in the association of Prabhupada. Prabhupada was always happy because he's connected with Krishna, who is the supreme happy. So this devotee, seeing all the people being made happy by Prabhupada, said that, Prabhupada, everybody loves you. Prabhupada said, yes, because I love everybody. So it's a very good inspiration for all devotees to read this Prabhupada Lilamrita. Every time I read, I'm just seeing how Prabhupada is dealing with everybody. We can't imitate Prabhupada, but just seeing how Prabhupada was so expert in dealing with everybody. When we say expert, we don't mean he was like a diplomat, although sometimes he could be diplomatic also. But Prabhupada had the art of touching people's hearts. So that's not something that we can legislate, but it is a quality to be aspired for. So that quality can be developed when we have the quality of father and mother, as Krishna explains here. The father and mother, they always have the welfare of the child at heart, and they're constantly trying to direct them and instruct them. And at the same time, they're tolerant of their weaknesses. So this culture of caring, this we want to establish in our society. See, Prabhupada was pushing, that was one side of Prabhupada, and that side we have adopted very much in our society. That's easier for us to adopt because this idea of do something, get something done, we can dovetail that very easily with our mode of passion. But it's also required that we adopt the culture of caring that Prabhupada brought also. So that's something I thought about when I saw today's verse. That Krishna is the father and the mother of everybody. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?
It happens so that sometimes while he's distributing books, he's just joking with people. He's just joking. He's not speaking about philosophy. He's simply joking with them. He's saying, it's good books, there are good books, good person, you are good man. And they say, okay, I'll take books.
I can understand he's speaking in Russian, but I don't understand Russian.
When he's joking with people, they simply take books, and when he says about philosophy, about soul, they become very, they scared. They become cold.
Okay, we'll get there, so.
Why did they accept while he's joking, and why did they reject when he's talking about philosophy? Yeah.
Who in this world is interested in philosophy? If you tell people these are books of philosophy, just the very word philosophy, they'll immediately, their mind will close up. So you can represent the happiness of Krishna consciousness. Actually, professional salesmen say that you don't sell the product so much as you sell your own personality. So if the people see that you are happy, so they'll connect that with the product, that this is something that makes them happy. And actually it will. I remember when I was selling books in England, this was many years ago, I used to talk all kinds of nonsense. Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj is here. Sometimes I couldn't distribute. He was saying, the way he dealt with people was so funny, I just couldn't stop laughing. He would show them the book. So yes, you just take this book, you have a look at the pictures, you tell them what to do. Alright, this is a good book, isn't it? Alright, so put your hand in your pocket and take out your wallet. Now just open it. Yes. And you see that note, he would point to the big note. Give it to me. Yes, that one. I couldn't. I was laughing so much. All my gurus. Prabhu Vishnu Swami was one of my Sankirtan gurus. He was actually temple president for all the temples in England, but he spent 5 days a week on traveling Sankirtan. He left other devotees in charge and he would go out. So I was just going out new and I was running here and there. Take a book. And I couldn't distribute any books. I was running around like a madman as usual. So I saw Prabhu Vishnu, so I was just talking to people very calmly and peacefully. Yes, this is a very nice book. It's very good for you. People say yes, yes. Very peacefully selling their books. So these are some of my Sankirtan gurus. Somehow or other we sold the books. Sometimes I'd be laughing so much, I just give the people the book. I could hardly say anything. But somehow they understood they were supposed to take the book and give some money. I don't know. We had so many interesting pastimes. There's so many.
Style that he distributes books joking.
Well,
in joking way.
Well, I think the purport of what I just said was somehow or other get the books out. You don't have to you shouldn't tell big lies. That's not a good thing. Sometimes devotees say, well, we're feeding children in Africa or something, which our devotees in Africa might be doing, but it's got nothing to do with the book. They were telling me one devotee in Moscow, Ambarish, famous devotee. I heard some stories of Ambarish. I think he's quite famous in Russia anyway. I've heard some stories of him. Ambarish, I think, how he's quite exceptional book distributor. They're telling me one story that he went into an office and all the people, they never saw anything, shaved head, tilak, dhoti, and they were all so surprised. So he said, he was telling them about our movement and everything, and he said, and actually our spaceship is just parked outside the office here. And all the people went to look to see this. I remember one devotee, he always used to say things like this. In England, I used to distribute with him. He used to say, this book does wonderful things in your life. The last person he bought one, he's flying in the sky. You see? That's not everyone should distribute like that. It takes a certain style. But anyway, everyone has their own style. Have you ever seen Naveen Nirada distribute books? I don't know what he says to the people, but it's just like he gives the book and within about 10 seconds they take out the money and give it. You get a whole pile of books. Which one do you want? Okay, take this one. Next. He doesn't spend much time with the people. Just a few seconds. Usually they take 3, 4, 5 books. So everyone according to their capacity. Marathon poster 98. So there are 2 posters actually. So on one of them there's 3 pictures from our Sankirtan in Gujarat, showing people with sets of books. So it's also going on there. I'm still doing book distribution one way or the other. Yeah, all of India is favorable. Yeah, all of India. Oh yeah. Well, you have to know how to do it. We distribute so many books in Bombay. Well, some devotees find it better in Bombay because there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in Ahmedabad also. There's people that's more English speaking in Bombay. Both places are good. Everywhere, the whole of India is a tremendous field for preaching. 900 million people. How many people in Lithuania? 10 million? Not even that. 3.5. So 900 million. And now already since we said that, there's already another 3 people. It's always increasing. Every minute there's another 20 born. Something like that. Yeah, well, that also. Anyway, it's a big field. Huge field. Huge field. Not only India, anywhere in the world. Now, the effect of Prabhupada's books is there. Anywhere you go, devotees preach, people will come, they'll become devotees, everything. I'm convinced anywhere in the world now. The preaching field is simply getting better and better and better. The more we preach, the better it becomes. People become more and more purified. Now we're having this congregational preaching and Namhata expanding. There was never any thought of that previously. I was, the first 2 years I was in the movement, I was distributing books in England and Ireland. And I can still remember the people who were interested in the books because there were so few of them. But and people thought we were very strange. But now so many people in England, in Europe, in America, they love us, they respect our movement. They like it. They think it's something very good. And so many people are becoming devotees in towns and villages all over the world. So there's a tremendous field for preaching. We can make hundreds and thousands of devotees, really. In India it's very obvious. I just got a message yesterday. One of my disciples who's preaching in Gujarat, concentrating on college preaching. And I also asked him to help on the other side of India where I'm also overseeing some preaching just like 2,000 kilometers away. He's also helping to oversee some college preaching on the other side of India. So he wrote that we're doing 2-3 programs a day and we're engaging more of the devotees in college programs because we don't have enough devotees for preaching. The preaching field is just exploding. The potential is there everywhere. Preach, make devotees. I mean, it doesn't just happen. It's not just that you go out and you say, Chant Hare Krishna, and immediately people follow. Preaching is a great thing to convince people. You have to give time, you have to preach them, you have to give them books, you have to give them prasadam, and many people will start to come and then they think, I don't want to come, and they go away again. Sometimes people come all the way in and get initiated and even then they go away. So you have to be very patient. But if we go on carefully, especially in a small country like this, you have to be very careful how you deal with people, isn't it? Because you don't have a very big population. And whatever you do will be seen. And it's the nature of Kali Yuga that people tend to see faults more. So you have to be very careful when you're doing book distribution or when you're dealing with the public. But if you do it carefully, then gradually people will come to understand what an important important message we have. And more people will take up Krishna consciousness. I'm sure that if you just go on, gradually you'll see, within 5 years, 10 years, if you keep on working, that more and more people will come to Krishna consciousness. So try to develop this congregational preaching especially, because we can't fit everyone in the temple. Managing a temple, it's a big job. It's a big burden actually in many ways. Burden of love, but a burden nevertheless. Congregational preaching means that not everyone can live in the temple, but they organize their own lives, their maintenance and everything themselves. But they're also devotees. They also preach. That we'll find now in so many places all over the world, in some remote village, there are some devotees, and they make their friends devotees, their mothers devotees, maybe even their cat and dog. They give them prasada. If anyone becomes a devotee, all living entities in relation with them become benefit. So it's anandam buddhi vardhanam. It's an increasing ocean of nectar. Just recently I was traveling in Russia, south of Moscow. So 2 years ago I went from a town called Tambov. Maybe you heard of that. Tambov, southeast of Moscow, about 600 kilometers. So 2 years ago I was going from Tambov to Samara. So there's no direct train line. So I went. We drove about 1 hour to a small town called Morshansk and took the train from there overnight train to Samara. So this time I was coming from Samara to Tambov, the other way. And the regional secretary, Yagya-priya Prabhu, who was arranging, he said that, well, now we have some devotees in Morshansk. It's a small town of 80,000. So I stopped there in the morning and did a little program. What had happened was that one man was in prison on some narcoticum. So, but when he was in prison, someone had a Bhagavad-gita, as it is. So he gave his gold watch in exchange for that Bhagavad-gita and read it and started chanting Hare Krishna. And when he came out of prison, he went on chanting Hare Krishna. And he started convincing other people to chant Hare Krishna. So when I went there this time, I was very happy because there's another town where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission has reached. There are so many cases. I was in Tatarstan, in Naberezhny Cholny, one town. And one lady came, middle-aged housewife, and she told me what had happened, that somehow or other she got one book called Life Comes from Life. She's from a small town called Chistopol on the sacred river Volga. Maybe not sacred. I guess our devotees swam in it, so now it became sacred. Anyway, she read that book, just what you might call an ordinary Russian housewife. So when she read that book, she knew, I've got to change my life. So she saw the address, Moscow. So she went to the temple in Moscow. And she found out everything about what to do, chanting Hare Krishna. And she's chanting Hare Krishna. And I think there's one other person in the town who's chanting. But like this, it's spreading gradually. You don't know who's going to become a devotee. Anyone. Even old babushkas. So many of them chanting Hare Krishna. In Naberezhny Cholny also I saw something very, very nice. We had the program and we're in the hall and we're all chanting and dancing. And at the back there were two of these old babushkas with their saris. They're also dancing. Oh, I like to have a photo. If I had a photo, I'd send it back to Godhead magazine. Very beautiful picture. I like to see them. So this is the ecstasy for the devotees. You've heard about the bees. They go from one flower to another and they collect a little nectar. So sannyasis in Krishna consciousness. We go from town to town and village to village. And we see everyone chanting Hare Krishna. And I'm sure you all have your problems. But at least, what do I see? I see you're chanting Hare Krishna. So there may be so many, this problem, that problem, another problem. But you're chanting Hare Krishna. And that's nectar. And I'm simply collecting nectar wherever I go. Seeing so many devotees happy, chanting. Prabhupada in London, once a newspaper reporter asked him that, in your old age, why are you traveling around like this? Prabhupada said, when I see that so many young boys and girls, they were hopeless, and now they are happy, that I get so much inspiration. Once also, maybe you've seen on this video, they were interviewing Prabhupada in the airport at Dallas. So they were asking about Prabhupada's disciples. Prabhupada said, yes, they're following all these principles. They're very clean, they're very pure. They are not hippies. So they asked, what would you define by a hippie? Prabhupada said, that you can say better than me. Something extraordinary. Prabhupada said, we are changing the hippies to happies. So Krishna consciousness is a very happy life. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. All devotees will say. Sometimes we see that devotees, they think it's too much, I can't take it anymore, I have to make some adjustment in my life, and they may go away from Krishna consciousness. But then they'll always say, actually that was the best time of my life. At the time they're thinking it's too much, all this getting up early in the morning, and I have to sleep in a tiny room with 20 other people, and 13 of them are always snoring at night, and trying to go to sleep at 10 o'clock and someone comes in shouting, Haribol, Haribol. It's too much. I have to get in the mode of goodness. I have to get out of this situation. When you may get out, you may be peaceful, but not blissful. So whatever the difficulties, we're not saying there aren't difficulties, but it's really worth tolerating it. It's really worth tolerating all the difficulties, just to get the nectar, living in the association of devotees, chanting Hare Krishna, taking prasadam. Did you all enjoy the feast today? Did you ever have any food like that before you joined this movement? Had you ever imagined any such food could exist? Actually, when I first came to the temple in England, I was already a vegetarian. So I used to eat salad and bread and things like that. So one devotee was standing outside the temple room door with the plate of Mahaprasad, giving everyone a little Mahaprasad. And he gave me a little. And it was a caramel sweet. He gave me this much. I never tasted anything like that before. So I didn't know. I just put my hand and took some. There's another. See, so many devotees, especially in the early days of our movement, it used to be extremely austere. I remember hearing in Boston in the late 1960s that they lived in a very bad area. I don't know if you can even imagine it living in this country. I think people in this country are quite sober. I mean, it's quite well behaved. But in the Western countries, often the people are really violent. One devotee was telling me they had this World Cup football and it was just like a world war. They were having street fights and everything. Serious fighting. So anyway, they were in one area where the rent was very cheap because no one wanted to live there because it was full of very low-class violent people. So every time they used to throw bricks and break the window, and they didn't bother to put the glass back in because again they would break it. I remember a few years ago I was in Liverpool. We were driving one area and I saw that in all the windows there were no windows. It was just corrugated iron sheets. So I asked, why is that? He said, well, they don't keep windows because as soon as you put glass, within half an hour someone will throw a brick and break it. So they just have corrugated iron sheets and they keep the light on all the time. So anyway, our devotees, they were living in a building with all the windows open in the winter, and they would wake up and in the morning and there would be snow up against their sleeping bed. So when I joined the temple in England, it was like that also. We had this big building donated by George Harrison. There was no money to heat it. So in the middle of winter, devotees all walking around inside with big coats on, gloves. During the arti, they'd bring the flame around and everyone would put their hand trying to get their hands warm. So it's like that in most of our temples in the early days. So the prasad usually is very austere. When I joined, then we had cows, so we had milk. So every morning we'd have this semolina with milk. And at midday we'd have khichdi and potato and cabbage sabji every day. But the feasts were pretty good. Once a week the devotees, they'd be very seriously eating. Once I used to see all the devotees, they would just eat so much. Then in our temple in central London, we had a temple, it was 5 stories high. 5 stories high. So after the feast, the brahmachari room, there were about, must have been about 60, 70 brahmacharis. The one room was about 1/3 the size of this room. And there was a roof also, but it was pretty cold. So anyway, after eating these huge feasts, the devotees would stagger up 5 stories. They'd collapse one on top of each other. And you'd hear these noises, these groaning sounds. So I asked the temple president that every Sunday our devotees, they just completely eat more than an average person eats in a month every week. They'd have these plates and they'd completely fill them up. They'd sit there very seriously. And when they'd finish, stagger up and they'd fill up their plate again. And they'd go on like this until there was nothing left. There's these huge pots, and they'd be cleaning the pots out at the end, and everyone would be absolutely full. So I asked the temple president that, why did Prabhupada have these feasts? Because we're not supposed to eat too much. He said, Prabhu, if we didn't have these feasts, we'd all bloop. See, sometimes devotees used to think that, every day I'm just getting this khichdi and it's so cold and too much. I like Krishna. I like Krishna conscious, but this is just too much. I'm going to bloop. So they'd be walking out the door and a devotee would see him and say, Prabhu, where are you going? I'm blooping. But look, it's only 3 days to the Sunday feast. Why don't you wait till... Think of all those pakoras, puri, sabji with ghee, and halava. Alright. They say the word halava. Okay. I'm blooping after the Sunday feast. So when they take the next feast, they're thinking that, this is my last Sunday feast. I've got to eat as much as I can. So instead of eating as much as a normal man would eat in 1 month, they'd eat as much as a normal man could eat in 2 months. And when they're thinking, well, Krishna consciousness is not so bad after all. And by the time they're finished, they can't move for 3 or 4 days anyway. And then by the time they're thinking, well, maybe I should leave, then the devotee says, well, it's only 3 days for Sunday feast. One devotee, he joined our movement in Germany. This was about almost 30 years ago now. Actually, he's one of the gurus in our movement now. So he joined, and after every few weeks he would vanish for a few days. He would just go, he was doing his service, he would just leave the temple. And no one knew where he went. But after 3 or 4 days he would come back and he would go on with his service. And whenever anyone asked when he go, he said, well, I just went away. He would never tell anyone where he went. So this went on for some time. Then gradually he vanished less and less, and then he stopped going away and he would just stay. So after 2 or 3 years, his parents came to visit the temple and they said, yes, we're very happy our son's a devotee. Before he was wild, but now he seems very happy. He's leading a very good life. One thing we could never understand. When he first joined, every few weeks he would come home and he would go in the kitchen and look for the biggest pot, and he would get this semolina and this butter and this sugar, and he would cook this big pot. And then he would say some prayers in Sanskrit, and then he would eat it all. And then he went to sleep for 2 or 3 days, and then he went back again. You can never understand it. So the conclusion is, if you want to keep your devotees, feed them halava. Make sure they have plenty of halava. What is the solution to all your problems? Tamil President, are you listening? What is the answer? So many devotees are coming with so many problems. So when they come with problems, you should say, gulab jamans are also very good. Do you have any problem, Prabhu? Here, take this gulab jamun. Of course, you might find the devotees get more and more problems. But actually there are no real problems. Prabhupada used to say, what is the problem? What is the difficulty? There's no difficulty. There's no difficulty so great that a few gulab jamans can't solve it. So chant Hare Krishna, take prasad and be happy. Hare Krishna. Any problem? He's going to give a problem. Where's the gulab jamun? I'm not going to tell you. There's so many stories. So many stories, devotees absolutely spaced out. Actually, in those days, most of the devotees who joined our movement, they were formally drugged out to the max. So we got so many crazy types joining. That was considered. Actually, many devotees, they were reading our books, and they used to read about Narad Muni dancing naked and all, how devotees are, in Nectar of Devotion, there are so many descriptions of devotees becoming insane in Krishna consciousness, and they were attracted to that because so many of our devotees were insane. But anyway, by Krishna consciousness, that I hope some of us have become somewhat sane. You can't imagine, Prabhupada, he came to bring the most important religious movement in history. And he was working with, people that they were rejected by human society. That they're just actually useless people. They didn't like to do any work, and they were just interested in taking intoxication, having sex. And Prabhupada made them the leaders of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. So who can imagine what miracles Prabhupada has done? So what was his program? Chant Hare Krishna, take prasad, study these books. Same program, very simple program. So these basic activities, remain always the basic activities of our movement. Chanting, dancing, prasadam distribution, book distribution. These are our basic activities. Sometimes we have very extravagant ideas or very sophisticated ideas, but the best preaching is always chanting Hare Krishna, distributing books, distributing prasadam. And other programs may be there. This is the basis of it. I was talking about that college preaching in India. I was just mentioning about that. So you might think that we have to go in with so much complex philosophy. So naturally the students like some philosophical approach. The main thing they like is kirtan and prasadam. Because they're frustrated. So when they want some nectar in their life. And they'll have so many philosophical, this question, that question, that question. But the thing which really gets through to them is kirtan and prasadam. So people, their lives are dry, dull, boring, frustrated. Devotees, they're distributing drops of nectar. So this will attract people.